So good morning, everyone in Europe. Good afternoon to the ones that are based in China. So my name is Sara Medina. I'm a member of the board of SPI and coordinator of ENRICH in China. And I'm very pleased to be here with you today to present you in this webinar that will be talking about business development in China, how to secure the right strategic partnerships, and how to establish the right presence in China. So we are organizing this webinar together with two very interesting organizations that are already very active in China. So it's really my great pleasure to introduce you Benjamin Schmittzehe, and he's going to talk about securing strategic partnerships in China, best practices. I will introduce him better to you in a minute. And I'm very pleased also to have with you Sally Maier-Yip, and Sally will be talking about building a trusted thought leadership presence in China. Next one, please. So Benjamin, he's the CEO of Schmittzehe and Partners, and Benjamin, usually he lives in Shanghai. We were just talking before the webinar started that he's right now in the UK, but he's looking forward to going back to China. And he has been really running this company that was founded in 2005. And the company has offices across different countries in Asia and also in Europe, and with a basis in China and Shanghai. It's a Asia-focused boutique management consultancy offering a strategy and also investment, also dealing with the mergers and the acquisitions, due diligence, and also business development services. Benjamin has advised and also assisted medium and large multinational companies, and also leading financial institutions across a wide range of sectors in different Asian countries, and with a focus on China. So again, very pleased to have you with us, Benjamin, and to be able to co-organize this webinar with you. I'm very also pleased to have with us Sally Maier-Yip. She is the managing director of 11K Consulting. And Sally is a leading, basically has been working with China for a long time, also lived for a long time in Hong Kong. And 11K Consulting is a leading UK-based Chinese luxury lifestyle PR and communications agency that is able to help clients to grow their business in Europe, in China, also in Hong Kong, and across different Asia countries. Sally and her team, they are comprised of modern, multilingual communications experts, and they are able to help European clients from a range of sectors and also a range of countries to reach and to connect with the Chinese and Asian investors. So again, very pleased to have you with us as well, Sally. I'd like also to introduce you to Mariana Marx. Mariana Marx will be supporting us during this webinar. Mariana has been working with us also in SPI and ENRICH in China for quite some time, and Mariana will now explain the technicalities of this webinar and how all of you can also connect with us in the questions and answers session. Mariana, please.
Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So as Sarah mentioned, I will be handling the technical aspect of the webinar. And so I would like to remind you that in your GoToWebinar panel, you have a section called questions. So you can go there during the webinar and write any question that you have during the presentations of our speakers. At the end, we will read those questions and post them to the speakers at the questions and answers section. So if you're not able to speak, but you can type in any question, or if you have any doubt, I will be checking during the session the questions, and I will be trying to answer and to give any support needed. And then at the end, we will read your questions that are directed to our speakers. So please feel free to type in any question, and then we'll answer it at the end.
Thank you very much, Mariana. So I'll present very briefly about ENRICH in China, and then I'll give the floor to our guests of today, Benjamin and Sally. So ENRICH in China, basically we are a network of research and innovation centers that are able to connect different types of Europeans, going from startups to SMEs, also research organizations, business associations, also chambers of commerce, industry with China. So basically we are a platform linking the Europeans with China on all aspects related to research and development, science, technology, and innovation. So SPI, we are a management consultancy company that started its operations in '96. Actually, my father was the founder of SPI. He's still the president. And we established an office in China in 1999. So more than 20 years ago that we have a physical presence in China. So together with a group of other implementing partners from different European countries, including Steinbeis, Fraunhofer, the National Funding Agency from Austria, FORF, also EU Relations, EBN. We are establishing this network to connect with the Chinese. And from the Chinese side, we have organizations that belong to the Ministry of Science and Technology in China, and also universities like Nottingham University, Tsinghua University, also the European Union Project Innovation Center based in Chengdu, and also Innovation Norway that has also a physical presence and offices in Norway. Next one, please. So ENRICH in China has the support from the European Commission under Horizon 2020. And again, we are able to connect this research, innovation, and business community with China. Next one, please. We offer different types of services to these different types of organizations. So we can be providing one-to-one consultancy. So if an organization like an SME comes to us, how can I find the best technology partner in China? So we understand your requirements, and then we can go to the market, and also through our network of partners, we can provide this service to you. We also develop different types of market reports. That can be a market report about the sector of nanotechnology, about ICT, about biotechnology, or any specific market report towards your specific interests. In our website, you can also find the market reports about technology transfer, about how to understand the Chinese innovation ecosystem, how to establish the right partnership, and other different types of reports. We also have a series of trainings like this one that we run on a regular basis. We also do workshops in physical location when the conditions will allow. And these webinars run very often, and I will tell you also more that are coming up in the coming weeks. We also have a newsletter, so you can subscribe to be part of our newsletter. We have also a series of soft learning zones. Next one, please. So these are basically physical locations in China across different cities, and we have right now quite a number of them that have been certified by ENRICH in China, and they are located in Beijing, in Xijiashuan, very close to Beijing, in Hangzhou, in Xi'an, in Shenzhen, and basically they provide physical space apart from also providing other types of support. So these are organizations that already have credibility and also are used to work with Europeans, and they can really advise you on anything you need. So if you are an SME, if you are a researcher that aims at being established in China, you can come to us and we can recommend you the best soft learning zone to address. Next one, please. We organize many matchmaking and many missions to China, so usually about 3 each year. Last year, I was actually during this time in the China High Tech Fair in Shenzhen, and we take a group of Europeans and we can organize missions focused on a specific sector, or we can also organize more horizontal missions across a range of sectors, with always a focus on science, technology, and innovation. During the missions, we try to bring the group to a high reputation conference or fair, and we also organize the B2B and specific matchmaking, and also different business visits to very interesting organizations. So we have a team in China, also based in Beijing. It is able to work on all these arrangements and provide all the needed support. Next one, please. So these are activities that are coming on very soon. So next week we are going to have on Tuesday a webinar focused on the robotics sector. So we have an invited speaker that is right now based in the US, and she will be talking about really on the latest developments and the future trends of research and innovation on robotics. So don't miss this webinar. It will take place on Tuesday, November 24 at 4:15 CET. 2 days after, on November 26, this time in the morning, that we also allow the Chinese participants at 10:15 CET, the same time as today. You have a webinar focused on our new soft landing zone based in Shenzhen, and they will be talking about how really this digital Bologna hub in Shenzhen is able to provide support to the different European organizations. We will also get to know accelerator that they are right now also engaged with, and how this accelerator can also support all of you in your business in Shenzhen. Next one, please. Also, other types of webinars and activities coming up. On December 11, we have another webinar, in this time focused on the business opportunities in the healthcare sector between China and Portugal. And also a workshop that is coming up in December. The date is just being finalized. It's an activity organized together with the Innovation Center in Denmark, that is one of the partners of ENRICH in China. And we are organizing this event on Sino Danish Child Friendly Community Forum. So if you happen to be based in Beijing, you are also very welcome to join us on this. We also have, together with the University of Nottingham, a database, a platform being developed it's called ENRICH in China Digital Guidance. It's really a database on the geographical distribution of industry focus in the different cities and the regions in China, including the ENRICH in China regional hubs and also the soft landing zones and the different industrial parks, including also guidance reports aiming to help the European SMEs and other types of European organizations to identify the best cities, the regions, and also the opportunities in China, which cover policies on the research and innovation support of the most internationalized provinces, cities, and the city districts in China. So this is quite interactive, so we recommend you to access this platform. So this is what I had to present you this morning, and I'll be available also in the end for any questions. So it's my great pleasure now to welcome again Benjamin. And Benjamin will be talking about how to secure the best strategic partnerships in China. And Benjamin, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I think I'm sharing my screen. I hope you can see that. Okay, is that all visible? Let me just make sure. Right, is the screen visible now?
Yes, Benjamin, now it is.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you very much for your introduction. Yes, so as Sarah mentioned, we're an Asia-focused management consulting company founded just over 15 years ago. Originally, we were exclusively focused on China. The presentation that I'll be taking you through, best practices with regards to securing strategic partnerships in China, is based on, well, hundreds of cases that we have worked on over the years, as well as my personal 30+ years of experience in China. But having said that, a lot of the learnings, a lot of the best practices, to be honest, are very applicable to other regions, other situations, including Chinese companies looking to expand abroad. But the examples are all specific to foreign companies looking to expand into China. So bear with me. Okay. So if you think about strategic partnerships, they come from many different needs. You have some listed in the top left-hand corner there. It could be sales and distribution, sourcing, IP, etc. For the purposes of today, I shall focus most of my examples on companies looking to secure distributing partners in China. But again, a lot of this, in fact, pretty much all of it, is applicable to lots of different scenarios as well. So should you be looking to in or out license intellectual property, manufacture, etc. And of course, there are many different kinds of strategic partnerships, but ultimately, there are some common best practices that are worth bearing in mind. And I've structured this almost in a chronological order. If you look at the wheel on the right, starting with one, what are you trying to achieve? So thinking about your objectives, moving on to strategy, number 2, why would you be the ideal potential partner? So what is your value proposition? Moving on to 4, who to partner with. In other words, the search process. And then finally 5, how to achieve and sustain a partnership. In other words, the whole aspect of relationship management. Now, let's start then with objectives. And here really we're talking about what are we trying to achieve here. In our experience, many companies, because of all sorts of different activities going on in parallel, tend to address strategic partnerships with a certain amount of serendipity. In other words, we find a partner at a conference, at a trade show, they seem to be pretty good, and we went ahead and worked with them. And what we're suggesting is that a much more proactive, thought-through process makes a lot of sense. And the first place to start is really to think through in quite a bit of detail what your objectives are. And not just to look at the short term, but also to look at the medium and long-term objectives. And those may indeed change, and therefore you need to plan for that evolution. And that will have implications about the sort of partnerships you want to put in place and who might be the right partners. And you also, of course, want to anticipate future potential changes in your needs. So if you look at the left-hand side, just some quotes from conversations we've had in the past with clients and their experiences of partnerships. The right strategic partnership when we first started in China turned out not to be the right strategic partner a few years later. Yeah, exactly that. You see a reflection of the fact that perhaps the partner needs may have changed, or the form of partnership perhaps that is ideal may have changed, or the terms of that partnership. Another client, our strategic partnership broke down, severely impacting the business beyond losing the partner. In other words, there was a dependency on that particular partner, and when our client decided to move away, to terminate that relationship, that ongoing dependency on that partner caused a lot of issues beyond just losing that partner. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So if we look at the right, essentially we've mapped out the diagram here where essentially if you identify your short-term objectives, mid-term objectives, and long-term objectives, for each of them your needs may change, and it's important to identify what they are. And then at each point, right at the beginning, before any strategic partnerships are put in place, so the position 1, and then perhaps when we move from short-term to medium-term objectives, and then again from medium to long-term, and then finally right at the end when perhaps no partnerships are needed anymore, at each step, anticipating what the particular situation is, what is the ideal partner, the structure of the partner, etc. So time horizon planning, very important. Change assessment, assessing the changes over time in these different phases in terms of location. Maybe initially we're looking to set up manufacturing near a port with free trade zones to allow us to effectively import and export products. Over time, we need to move geographically further inland because we're looking to source more and supply primarily to the domestic market in China. In terms of product, perhaps over time we're going to be expanding the product ranges, and perhaps a partner initially may not be the right partner later on. Also technology, capabilities, etc. And so not only mapping the anticipated needs in different time zones, but then also what are the implications of those changes in terms of the partnership, and putting in place mitigation and contingency plans. What do we do in anticipation of what will happen? And also, if the change happens in the future, what will we do as and when it happens? Also, number 4, right at the end, after the long-term objectives, consider the end of life of the partnership. Many partnerships have a beginning, middle, and end, and often we don't spend enough time thinking about when will that partnership come to a natural end, and how will we extricate ourselves from the partnership? How will we end that partnership? It's often very important to anticipate that up front, to plan for it. And ideally, and many of our clients are quite reluctant to do this, but you certainly want to consider at least a possibility of exploring this in advance, right at the beginning, with a potential partner. That is purely in order to have a level of transparency, but also to manage expectations. We've observed many situations where one party to a partnership is anticipating, after certain objectives are met, that the partnership will no need to continue, but have not communicated that to the other partner. At a certain point, that causes a significant misalignment in objectives, which can cause significant problems for both partners. And so planning ahead so that both parties know exactly what the purpose of the partnership is, when to expect it to end, and also have pre-agreed how that partnership will end, makes a lot of sense. And then finally, risk assessment. So understanding what might go wrong, and also what dependencies we have on the partnership. I've got a couple of examples here. One is company chops, and the other is product registration entity. And in both cases, we've seen many, many issues from both of these. So the first thing is for those of you who are not aware, when a company is registered in China, that company has some chops which are prepared for them. And the chop is similar to an authorized signature from that company. So if a foreign company is in partnership with a Chinese partner, and let's say they form a joint venture, that joint venture is registered in China and has a company chop. Now, the legal authority of the chop means that whatever document is chopped is recognized as it has been signed off by the company. And typically, the chop has to be held by an individual who is based in China, because they often have to use the chop for various paperwork. So if you're in Europe, for example, and your Chinese partner is in China, not surprisingly, and they have the chops, and at some point something doesn't work out with the relationship and you decide to terminate the relationship, don't forget that they may have those chops. And as a result, they have the ability to sign agreements, free up capital, which is in bank accounts, etc., using the chops. The second thing is a local product registration entity. So when a foreign company, for example, is looking to distribute a product in China, let's say it's a food product, or perhaps a cosmetic product, these products have to go through very thorough verifications in China, and are issued then with registration and licenses to be able to be distributed in China, and they're recognized as being safe, etc. So the entity that goes through that process with the authorities has to be registered in China. So often foreign companies will identify a distributor in China and say, right, we want to distribute these products through you in China. Please help us to register them. Later on, the foreign party perhaps decides to move away from that distributor, perhaps to another distributor. And that's where the problem starts, because the first distributor has those products of the foreign company registered in China under their name, because you had to have a local entity. And so then it's very difficult to switch to the second partner if there's an acrimonious dispute between the distributor and the product owner, because actually the company that has a right to distribute the product and has the license for those products is under the name of that first distributor. So a lot of these issues have to be anticipated and planned for in advance. So moving on from objective to strategy, having identified what our objectives are, how do we travel to our ultimate objectives? And this is where we have to develop a strategy in terms of partnerships. So some common challenges on the left: infighting developed between our various partners in China, including channel and territory conflicts between distributors. In other words, perhaps we have a distributor for northern China, one for southern China, And they're starting to argue because the one in southern China claims that the distributor in North China is selling products in their territory and vice versa. Or perhaps a distributor exclusively focused on online, another one exclusively focused on offline, and the online partner is complaining that the offline partner has been selling product through other online channels and therefore encroaching on their right. Very hard for the European company to try and identify what is really happening and to sort those sort of problems out. But this is a very, very common issue in terms of distribution. We have found it very hard to exert much control over our partner's conduct. Once a partnership is in place, and if the partner is active in China and the partnership is all about the activities in China, very hard remotely to start to identify what is really happening and then exert any influence over it. Thirdly, our partner's performance has not lived up to our expectations in certain channels, categories, fields. Again, very common. Distribution example, we identified a particular distributor. They seem to be performing very, very well in southern China, but their sales in northern China is a lot weaker than we expected, and yet they had claimed that it had great national distribution coverage. So how do we try and address some of these challenges? Well, the first thing is, if you look at the diagram on the right, short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives, the idea really is, having identified the valuation needs, is then to map out, therefore, the kind of partner that one needs. So, for example, if you look at the first horizontal line, the idea here is actually perhaps the right partner is the right one throughout time, and they will satisfy all of the objectives. But we might either anticipate in advance that by the time we get to our midterm objectives, we may need to add another partner, or that we need to switch partner. And then same with moving to medium to long-term objectives. Of course, it may also be that it's hard to anticipate, but we're also evaluating potential developments in the market, which means that we may need to prepare to have the introduction of a second partner in place. And again, by anticipating that, it allows us not only to prepare for the search, but also in terms of the way in which we structure the first deal with our first partner. So we need to define the optimal form of partnership, anticipating, planning any evolution over time, hence the diagram above, and then designing a path. At what point are we potentially going to add a partner? You know, if we appoint a national distributor, what happens if we then want to add more strength in southern China, or do we focus on North China and then give us the flexibility to either add southern China later on to the same distributor or pick a different distributor? Also then, in terms of scope, in picking a strategic partner, what are our must-haves? If you think about a wanted poster from a Western movie, from a cowboy movie perhaps, that wanted poster, you know, what are the criteria? What's the description? You know, wanted poster, they have a moustache, they have a scar on their cheek. Well, in this case, you know, what are the must-have? It has to be a distributor that has the following coverage, that has the following capabilities, that has the following technical understanding. And then what are the nice-to-haves? The criteria which are not absolutely critical, but will help us to compare different potential partners that all meet the must-have criteria. And then also embrace this English idiom, jack of all trades, master of none. In other words, it's very hard to find a partner that is strong at everything, and partners which are able to do a bit of everything typically are not particularly good at anything in particular. And so we need to either determine what is absolutely critical in terms of the capabilities and focus on that, or we need to consider having different kind of partners for different kind of capabilities. So a good example of this that we found a number of times is in terms of distribution online versus offline. Online distribution in China has become an incredibly effective tool given the e-commerce capabilities and logistics capabilities in China. And often we found clients will appoint an offline distributor and tack on the rights for them to also provide online distribution, and are then very disappointed at their performance online. Often companies which are very strong at distributing offline don't necessarily have the expertise to really perform online. Conversely, companies which are very, very effective at distributing online either don't have the offline capability or do, but again, it's not really their specialization. Now, remember what I mentioned in terms of conflicts of channels, which is you could decide to go down the route of appointing one for one and one for the other, but then you have to anticipate how to deal with these channel conflicts. And then finally, delegating local complexity to a local partner. Often we will speak to partners that will say, look, China is a huge market, therefore I don't want to appoint one distributor for all of China. I'm going to appoint different distributors for different provinces and regions of China. Fine. But then, as mentioned with these different challenges and quotations on the left, often clients will then run into all sorts of issues and disputes between different partners, and not being on the ground in China, not really understanding the local context. It's hard to understand exactly who is in the right and who isn't, and even harder to know what to do about it. In many situations, it make much more sense, since ultimately one of the points of having a partner is to find someone who has that local expertise, is to appoint a master partner and then work with that master partner to get them to help you to select sub-partners who will then work with that master partner. So that could be a master distributor that has the rights of all of China, and then they will appoint sub-distributors for each region and online and offline. And then if there are any issues, it's the responsibility of your master partner to identify them and to sort them out. Or it could be, for example, from a manufacturing perspective, where you have a master partner who are on the ground, understand the situation, and they may bring other partners for individual manufacturing entities under that master partnership. So an example of that is a company that I used to work for many years called the Swire Group, which has a very diversified portfolio of businesses in China. And many years ago, they identified CITIC, a very large state-owned enterprise, as their master partner, and worked with them to set up Coca-Cola bottling plants in China, and then other businesses with CITIC. And then over time, CITIC helped the Swire Group to bring in other Chinese partners for individual businesses, but they had that master partner to go through to help them to identify and deal with certain issues. So moving from strategy to value proposition, why would the potential partner be interested in us? Looking at the left, a couple of quotes again. During early exploratory discussions with potential partners, we found we were not getting sufficient traction. Some of our clients are a little bit surprised in that they imagine, look, we're coming to China, we have a great product, great technology, and China historically has always been super keen for partnerships, but they don't seem to, I'm not getting as much interest as I was expecting when I'm approaching potential partners. Why is that? Well, often clients forget that China has developed over an incredible speed over the last few decades, and whilst perhaps 30 years ago, Chinese companies were very hungry for partnerships, for investment, for technology, and so on, the situation now has evolved to one where the whole world has wanted to do business with China, and many potential partners in China are inundated with requests and of interest, expressions of interest, sorry, for partnerships. And so it's very important for you to be able to really stand out, differentiate yourself, and put your best step forward in terms of how you present yourself to potential distributors or potential partners of any kind. Another quote, having formed a partnership, we subsequently discovered that the partner chose to partner with us for different reasons than those we anticipated, leading to misalignment of objectives and or disappointment and frustration later on. An example of this, which again we've seen a lot, is where a European company will strike a partnership with a Chinese partner. The main interest of the European partner is to work with this Chinese partner to distribute their products from Europe, and therefore the partnership is all about distribution in China. From the Chinese partner's perspective, their priority actually is technology transfer. The reason why they're partnering with that European company is that they're hoping that some of the technology will be transferred, perhaps that they will then be able to manufacture some of those products with the European partner, and then potentially re-export some of the innovation that has been developed as a result. And when that misalignment is then discovered, again, that creates incredible frustration between the two partners. And so the answer to all of this, of course, is clarity of purpose, clarity of communication. So some best practices on the right. First of all, develop your partner search in a dedicated credentials deck. Many companies will use their standard presentation on their company. You need a dedicated document which is specifically for the purpose of looking for partners, because the content that you need to include in that is quite different. you need to articulate in a full and differentiated way your value proposition to the potential partner. Not just, here's my company introduction, but why would you be interested in partnering with me? In other words, what do I have to offer, not to my customer, but to my partner? What support? What makes me different from others? Why would you want to be my partner? Also, remember, Chinese partners, as I mentioned, are used to being courted. And so you need to stand out. You really need to differentiate yourself. Localize a credential deck. Don't just translate it. In other words, sure, once you've figured out what your deck looks like, your credentials deck, translate it into Chinese, but make sure the content is specific to China. So, for example, don't just talk about your capabilities, your technology, your customers, but how about in the China context? Do you have any Chinese customers? You might want to highlight them. What other businesses have you already conducted in China? You might want to highlight that. Which of your technologies are applicable to China as opposed to those which aren't? Don't mislead the partner. Be specific about what is in scope and what is out of scope. Ensure China-specific customer differentiation and USPs. Again, the way in which you're differentiated, your unique selling proposition might be different in the China market, given that the competitive dynamics are different. Consider your China partners' priorities. They may be different, as I mentioned earlier on, and then demonstrate your understanding of the local market. As you address strategic partnerships, you want to be able to show that you're not completely dependent on your partner, that you understand a certain amount of the market, and therefore that you're speaking grown up to grown up, as opposed to be an entity that is perceived as being completely ignorant of the market. And so it puts you in a much stronger negotiation position later on, and also ensures that you really understand the discussion, and therefore you're able to drive in the right direction. So display your understanding of the market, how your product fits into that market, both from a product perspective or service perspective, but also from a competitive dynamic and potentially regulatory as well. And then moving on to the search process, who do we partner with? And here, as I mentioned right at the beginning, we highly recommend a very thorough, proactive, methodical approach to the search. Rather than, as is mentioned on some of the examples on the right, perhaps relying on bumping into someone in a trade show. The owner of the business seems to speak very good English. They really understand what we're doing. But then later on, we discover that the people we're dealing with on a day-to-day perspective are perhaps not as good in terms of English, and the quality of the relationship is not at all as strong because we're dealing with somebody completely different. Or we've picked a partner which is one of the biggest in our sector, so they must be the best. But the problem is we later on find out that our business as a percentage of their total business is not significant enough, and therefore they're not pushing our product enough. They're not prioritizing us as a partner as much because we don't represent that big an opportunity for them. Or at first the potential partner seemed very interested, and we had a lot of time intensive discussions, but later on it didn't lead to anything, and then we wasted a lot of time. This is because typically many entrepreneurs or Chinese businesses tend to be very opportunistic. It's very hard for them to say no up front. Even if your initial value proposition doesn't really resonate with them enough, they may be thinking, well, let's perhaps continue this discussion because it may lead to other opportunities as we start to develop that relationship. And so we have to be careful on one hand to make sure that we stand out and we're as attractive as possible, but also anticipate the fact that many potential partners may initially sound interested, but may ultimately not be. They're just waiting to find out more about us, and therefore we want to make sure that we plan accordingly. And then having partnered with the company, we find later on that they are not what they seem, and we end up with some concerns about that potential partner. So we recommend a step-by-step process from partner scoping, so must-have, nice-to-have in terms of criteria, with some weighting for the nice-to-have, which of the nice-to-haves are more important to others, and then a long list. So essentially starting with some research that leads to a long list of potential partners which are in scope, in other words, that meet the must-have criteria, and then moving on to a short list. So of that long list, which are the ones then which rise to the top, because the nice-to-haves, using a weighted system, are the ones that score the highest, and therefore are the best fit for us. And then finally conducting some due diligence for example, in terms of reputation, track record, how successful they've been with past relationships, verifying claims that have come up in the initial discussions. And this typically requires probably more than just desk research, but a certain level of interviews, etc. So very proactive in terms in terms of the process, and also focus on appetite. Big is not always best, but motivation is key. And so in terms of the criteria for selection, thinking through how do we gauge appetite, how do we gauge how keen this potential partner is, so that we don't end up with a partner that's very big, but actually is not very motivated to work with us. And then finally, once the relationship progresses, how do we ensure that this partnership is sustainable? And this is all about relationship management. Looking at the right in terms of some of the best practices, first thing is relationships first. Many foreign companies, and this is even more the case with American companies and European companies, they find it very strange that when they first start talking to a potential partner, the Chinese partner initially is quite reluctant to talk about details of business. They're much keener to go and have a banquet, have a meal, and have more of a social conversation. Actually, this is quite natural, because essentially what the Chinese partner typically is trying to do is to say, let's build a relationship first. Let's see if we can trust each other. If we feel we can trust each other, then we can get down to business. This makes a lot of sense, and it's something that we need to be prepared for and need to engage with. Secondly, communication. Often potential partnership discussions initially break down because the Chinese partner, who, remember, is used to being approached by many foreign potential partners, is very concerned about commitment. And so timely and frequent communication at the beginning is very important, because the Chinese partner, just like yourself potentially, is very worried about wasting a lot of time talking to you, and then one day they won't hear from you. So they're looking to see how committed you are at the front. Of course, language is important, ensuring that you're able to communicate not through an interpreter and through broken English, but actually that you're able to converse ideally in Chinese with some sort of use instead of WhatsApp in China. Email. Many companies in China surprisingly use email very little, and when they do, it tends to be private email services rather than corporate ones. Phone is used a lot more. Of course, face-to-face is absolutely critical. With the COVID situation, that's a little bit more difficult, but the extent to which you can organize face-to-face meetings, or perhaps an alternative, a video call, helps a lot. Parallel tracking. Given some of the challenges I mentioned earlier on, where you could waste a lot of time and discover that the discussions don't end up leading to a successful relationship, try and speak to several potential partners at the same time. This has a benefit, of course, that if one discussion breaks down, you have alternatives, but also potentially it puts pressure on partners if you make them aware that you are talking to other potential partners at the same time. So it improves your negotiating position, but beware of collusion. China geographically is a huge country, but in many, many sectors, it's a very small world where many competitors often are, the business owners know each other and will meet and discuss business on a regular basis. And it's a very common occurrence where several business owners are having a meal together and say, well, you know, company X from Europe contacted me. Oh, that's funny. They contacted me as well. So this kind of situation is quite common, and you have to be a little bit careful about that. Also, anticipate typical Chinese approach to objective and strategy setting. I could go into this in a lot of detail, but I don't think we have time right now. But essentially, whilst foreign companies have a very linear approach to strategy, where they will set a long-term objective and then think about steps to get there, Chinese companies go more for an options approach. In other words, identify a number of different strategic opportunities and then start sounding them out in parallel. And then when some prove to be not as exciting as they'd anticipated, they will get rid of that option and then focus on the remaining options and maybe create some more. Essentially, it's a little bit like feeling your way across a room in the dark with your eyes closed. You have your hands in front of you and you're feeling for where the opportunity is. And in a market with less certainty, which historically has been the case in China, this makes frankly far more sense than the typical Western approach to strategy. But you need to anticipate that, because that's the way in which many Chinese companies operate in terms of their approach to objectives and strategy setting. Alignment. So you have a Chinese expression which is translated as in the same bed but with different dreams. And essentially, this is a term that was coined in China or used a lot in the 80s and 90s with regards to Sino-foreign relationships. Essentially, strategic partnerships were put in place, and then the two partners over time discovered that their objective, their dreams were very, very different. And so again, aligning our objectives through ongoing discussion and clarity and honesty with each other is very, very important. And then knowledge sharing. Your partner in China understands the market much better than you do. It's important for you to consider building into the relationship mechanisms for them to share their understanding of the market with you, so that you build up that expertise yourself. Potentially also, well, actually I'll come back to that in a minute, but also remember reciprocity. It may well be that your Chinese partner would really value it.
Start wrapping up. If we could start wrapping up.
Yes, I'm almost done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So it's also, they will also value you sharing your knowledge of other markets, and that may help them to perform in China. So for example, a situation where a partner was distributing consumer goods in China, and the foreign partner was able to share with them expertise of best practice of what works in other comparable markets, which helped the Chinese partner to improve, build up their expertise, and be more effective in distributing that foreign companies' products in China. And thirdly, and finally, third party. Often having an independent third party that can be your eyes and ears on the ground, that's impartial, so that you don't fully rely on your strategic partner. Maybe that partner can also have look after the registration of your products. They will never be able to distribute your products. You pick someone that aren't able to go down that route, but essentially they're a partner that cannot cause you any problem, but can be your eyes and ears on the ground, hold on to the different registration certificates, etc. So I hope that this was useful. Of course, you know, in the future, should any of you wish to discuss any of this in any more detail, you have my email address, I think, in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, for your excellent intervention, and really, really very pleased to have you with us. So it's really now my great pleasure to welcome Sally, and Sally will be talking about how to build a trusted thought leadership presence in China. So the floor is yours, Sally. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. My name is Sally. I'm based here in London. I'm conscious that we are running out of time, so I will try to make it concise 10 minutes, and do feel free to contact me after the presentation. So today I'm very delighted to share my tips on how to build your trusted thought leadership position, very positive reputation in China. Next slide, please. I won't go into detail. So who we are, essentially we do PR and communications for clients targeting the Chinese high net worth individuals, investors, and luxury consumers in the UK, China, and Hong Kong. We call ourselves 11K because if you Google, the distance between Europe and different parts of China is around 11,000 km. So that's our vision, to bridge the gap through communications. Next slide, please. And these are just some of our clients in different sectors. Next slide, please. So just now, Ben has touched on trust, and I would like to talk more about trust from a PR communication perspective, because that is actually very critical and fundamental to your communications, whether you are in a B2B or B2C businesses. So Ben also touched on relationship, and I will tell you a bit more why trust matters even more in China in some way. By different reports and statistics, it actually shows that Chinese consumers avoid advertising. They don't like hard sales. So 7 in 10, they don't like to be advertised, and they like to be communicated in earned media, meaning that things that they trust. And most importantly, it's about building your authority, be seen as the leader, the expert in your field, and also through emotional connections, through empathy, especially in the COVID-19 world. That later I will share some statistics, how COVID has changed communications, how Chinese people have changed their perception about companies. And more essentially, it's all about building a purposeful brand, build your trust, which will essentially build your market shares and your share voice. Next slide, please. So here are some statistics from the most recent Edelman Trust Barometer report. Basically, every year, Edelman agency interview different consumers in China and across Europe and Asia around the trust issue. And just look at the China market. The report actually showed that 69% of Chinese consumers agree that trust is even more important today than in the past, with the COVID in the mind. And as high as almost 9 in 10 people in China said that if they think that the brand is innovative or compassionate, they would want to support them and buy them, use their wallets, use their money to support the brand. Equally, in opposite, almost like 8 in 10 people, if they think that the brand is not acting correctly, appropriately during the COVID-19, they would actually ask their friends, don't buy them, don't support them, which is very high compared to the global number, which is only 4 in 10. So that showed that why trust is so important in China, and that lacks at least your communications, your thought leadership positioning in China. And the next slide, please. The next few slides, I will not go into detail, just show the percentage and to show that when people in China buy things, they consider trust first and then the price. Next slide, please. And again, this shows that there's an increase in trust when it comes to buying services and products in China. Next slide, please. And also how people are trusting brands than in the past. We can go to next slide, please. And here it shows which sectors are particularly trusted in China, which includes tech, food, and medication. Because of COVID, people rely on technology, rely on healthcare, food, and therefore these are becoming more trusted among the Chinese consumers. So next few slides, I'm going to talk about how you actually build your thought leadership positioning in China after knowing that trust is so important. The purpose of the brand is so important when you try to be seen, recognized as the expert in your industry. So Ben has actually touched on these points from a strategic partnership perspective, and also from the PR communication perspective. Before you decide what to do, how to communicate with your audience to be seen as an expert in the industry, it's so important that you are clear about your purpose, meaning that you need to know what is your vision, your brand values, because these days people actually do not just want to buy the products, but actually know why you are selling this product to me. So be very clear about your purpose. Second one is what. So what are you selling? What are your USPs? Why people should buy your products? And then the third one is who. So who are you trying to attract as your clients and your customers? Are they men, women, what age, which geography, what are their consumer behaviors? So be very clear who you are talking to, because that will heavily influence on your how, when, and where, which is more about your PR and marketing plan. So make sure that you want to talk to the right audiences at the right channels at the right times, consistently and repeatedly. And that's the very simple way to explain how you would then be recognized as the expert in your industry in China in the end. Next slide, please. Just to touch on the last bit about how, where, and when. So there are common tactics that are proved to work well in China when you want to build your thought leadership presence in China. So like Ben said, it's not just online, it's not just offline. You and I are also a consumer. So basically we mixed online to offline, offline to online. So from PR communication perspective. So you still want to talk to the right media that are trusted by your customers. It could be China Dailies, Forbes China, People Online Daily. It depends on your target audience. So you want to comment on industry news in the media that are trusted by your customers. Second one is social media. I'm not saying that you need to be on social media. Depends again on your target audience. So the common social media channels in China, as you may heard, are WeChat, China's super app, Little Webbook, which is like the Western world Instagram, Weibo is Twitter. So again, different social media has different functions and target audience. So again, understand who you want to attract and then design your social media strategy. Which I won't go into details now because we don't have time. And then try to get yourself to be a speaker at relevant industries, conferences, and events. That's quite an easy way to set yourself as the expert at that space. Have strategic partnership with other companies, which Ben has very excellently explained, so I won't go into details. And also direct introductions by your trusted people. So again, back to the relationship trust, ask your network, ask your clients to introduce people to you. And that's how you build your very deep relationships with the right audience, whether they are media, stakeholders, your partners, and even social media influencers. Next slide, please. In the next few minutes, I'm just going to show you some examples of what other companies have done really well in China in terms of their thought leadership, brand image building, and also some bad examples, what not to do. So the first example I want to talk about is McDonald's, which I think all of us are very familiar with. So even McDonald's as a big old brand, they actually admitted that the previous purpose and values were intangible, meaning that people do not really know what they try to achieve. And actually just very recently, just like over the past few weeks, they launched a new strategy called Serving Here campaign to really tell people about the purpose of McDonald's. And what they try to achieve is to support the farming communities, reduce wastage, protect the environment, etc. So make it very clear, explicit in terms of what they try to achieve as a business. So that's a good example from McDonald's, how to build a purposeful brand to build your trust and ultimately your sales. Next slide, please. The next one is actually one of our clients called HBA Residential. They are a high-end luxury interior design company in Singapore, but have lots of big clients in China, UK, Russia, India, etc. So our job is to build their thought leadership reputation in China. So we have been partnering with HBA Residential for 4 years now, and I think the client is very happy with the results. And we did that through bespoke China media strategy, contributing articles to Forbes, have private events, run their WeChat account to make sure that the brand communicates with their target audience on a regular and consistent basis. So that's how we try to build the authority of the company in the interior design sector in China. Next one, please. The other example is Burlington Market, which is our client as well. So we have been doing China PR for them for 5 years. And again, our job is to position them as the #1 luxury shopping destination in London. So this is a mix of online and offline activities we did for them. And the client did see 37% increase in sales, not sales, footfall into the Burlington Market from China and Hong Kong market. So again, really knowing your target audience and then communicate with them on the right channels is absolutely key to build your brand reputation. Next slide, please. So after some good examples, I also want to show you what not to do when you come to building your brand image in China. So this is quite a famous case that some of you may have heard about. So back in 2018, Dolce & Gabbana had eating with chopstick campaign, which meant to be creative, but it was received a very negative feedback from Chinese consumers, from their e-commerce partners, because what they have not done right correctly is that they're not cultural sensitive, as if saying that Chinese people do not know how to use chopsticks, do not know how to eat pasta, and therefore they need to use chopstick to eat pasta. So that was quite offensive to Chinese people in some way. And that negative impact lasted for a few years, not just that one-off incident. That recently they exhibited at the China International Import Expo a few weeks ago, and our KOL, meaning key opinion leader or social media influencer in China, actually explicitly supported their very decorative booth at the expo. But then he got criticized by the online community, saying why you are supporting them. So you can see that if you've done something wrong one time, it could cost you lots of money and need a lot of time to rebuild your reputation. So make sure you are culturally aware when you do business communicate with the Chinese audience. Next slide, please. So the other one is Mercedes-Benz back in 2019. So last year, what did wrong in this case study is that Mercedes-Benz was not politically sensitive enough. You can see on the poster, they said, look at situations from all angles, and you will become more open from Dalai Lama. This is, again, a no-no in the Chinese environment. If you want to build a brand reputation, don't play with politics. Next slide, please. And then this is a Chinese New Year campaign by very famous British fashion brand Burberry in 2019. So here, what they did wrong is that they are not, they play the stereotype of Chinese people wrongly. So Chinese New Year is a happy season for us. It's about togetherness, it's about joy. But in the poster, you can see the old lady in the middle is not very happy. So that doesn't appeal to Chinese people during Chinese New Year. So again, make sure that you don't overplay with the cultural heritage of Chinese people. Stick with some traditions when you try to build your brand image there. And finally, the next slide is the last bad example, Nike back in 2016 Chinese New Year. So also be aware of how things sound. So while these two words, fa, meaning get rich, and fu, mean good luck, both are very good, lucky meanings. But if you combine them together, you mean that I'm going to get fat. It doesn't work for Chinese people. No one wants to get fat in China. So again, be very cautious about how you campaign things. Make sure that you also sense check with Chinese people before you do things. And that quickly come to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please do feel free to WeChat, contact me on LinkedIn, email, etc. And I hope you find it useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally, for your excellent intervention. So I was really, really very pleased to hear about all your experience and concrete recommendations that you can give to all our participants from more than 12 EU member states. So we have right now time for a few questions. Mariana, I'll pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Sarah. At the moment, we don't have any question from the audience, so I will encourage everyone again. If you have any question for our speakers of today, you can go to your GoToWebinar panel, and on the questions box, you can write anything down there, and I will be reading the questions to our speakers.
And meanwhile, I can put a question. So maybe each of you could tell us if you were to give now, due to the COVID situation, and although in China people already can travel freely, but from Europe it's still more challenging to go to China. What would be your concrete recommendation that our participants that have an interest in China could develop and enhance the cooperation and find the right strategic partners in China at the moment before they can start traveling again? Could you give some ideas, some tips to our audience, please?
So you mean how European companies can still find strategic Chinese partners when we can't travel?
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ben, if you don't mind, I will go first. So I think for Chinese people, we are so used to mobile and WeChat. Whether there's COVID or not, communication never stops. 7 days, 24 hours. So don't feel that if you can't see the Chinese partners in person, it doesn't mean you can't do business with them. In fact, some of our property clients, they are trying to sell flats to Chinese people. And in the past, they would want to see the showroom, to see the flats in person. And now it's virtual tour. And then they make a deal, 1 million, 2 million pounds worth of property. So I think don't stop communications just to find ways of talk to them. You can still build the trust with them through online. You can't have nice meals together, but you can still show your sincerity to work together by feeding them relevant information about the West. They will appreciate your efforts to build value with them. Even myself, even I'm from Hong Kong, if I want to build a relationship with a new Chinese Hong Kong partner, I make it quite explicit that I want to be your friends. What can I do for you? Even though we can't see each other. So do plant all the seeds, and when things open up, then you will be definitely the first one they want to talk to you, because they appreciate that you already spend all the time and efforts to build a relationship with them.
Thank you so much, Sally. Benjamin, what would be your views?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing is that if everyone else is waiting until the virus is over, this is a perfect opportunity for you to go and proactively find a partner, because you have less competition. And the Chinese partners, of course, first of all, the whole virus thing in China calmed down much earlier than Europe. So many Chinese companies are back absolutely to normal operations, but they're not getting the approaches and the visits that they were. And so this is actually a fantastic opportunity. The second thing is, as my presentation outlined, there's a huge amount of work that ideally needs to be done before you meet your potential partners. And so this is a perfect time to engage in that. And as Sally said, as and when you're ready to meet them, then there are other technological solutions to do that, whilst you may not want to meet face to face. And then finally, of course, leverage advisors such as Sally, ourselves, and many others. Ideally also ones that have a presence in the region, in the country, that can represent you.
Many thanks, Benjamin and Sally. Was excellent. And actually, I was just also chatting earlier today with Benjamin and Sally that in China everything is really coming back to normal. They still use the masks because that's part of their daily life, even before the virus, to use the mask. But they are already traveling, and some of our colleagues of ENRICH in China, they have been traveling in the past weeks to events and activities in Hangzhou, in Shenzhen. So really, life is already back to normal in China. So it's really a question of getting there and still having to go through the 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel. So after that, life is back to normal. So please take the time and really do the homework. That's really very, very important on establishing strategic partnerships with China. And through Benjamin and Sally and through ENRICH in China, we can certainly support all of you in finding the right partners in China. Mariana, do we have any questions from our participants?
Yes. Right now we already have 2 questions. So I will read the first one. It's from Ild. She says, it seems very expensive to do business in China. Is there a way for SMEs which cannot spend large amounts of money in marketing campaigns? Maybe more directed to Sally, this one.
Yes. So I know a lot of clients say, oh, I don't really have big budget to do China. And also, it's our first time to do China. We can't afford to have big investment upfront, which I totally understand. And also for our clients as well, we don't advise them to put all your money on us. We don't want to take your money and then fail as well. We also want to make sure that we can make an impact on your business. So I think do baby steps, step by steps. So if you have never done anything with China, from a communication perspective, and with the COVID situation we are now that we are so online driven, so make sure at least you have a Chinese brochure to explain about your businesses, your story, your products. If you can't afford to have a Chinese website, then at least have a landing page, because a lot of English websites are blocked, are censored in China. So make sure it's hosted in China, if not Hong Kong, so that at least people can find you online, be visible online. And then talk to partners like Ben or myself, people who actually understand your industry, know people. Can they make any direct business introductions to start the conversations? And then if there are any short-term campaign or projects that you want to talk to the Chinese audiences, then maybe use it as a test to test the market before you see some results and then commit more. But I would say there's no magic to win the Chinese market. It's complicated. It does take time because it's such a big market. But I think it's worth the investment if you do see that it's one of your core markets down the line. So I would say take baby step by step, but you do need a long-term commitment in order to succeed in China.
Thank you so much, Sally. And Mariana, I think we have a last question before we end the webinar.
One last question from Dominique Mrak. What is your recommendation to place a new product to the southern part of China now in this context of the virus?
So the question is, what is your recommendation to place a certain product in a certain region of China?
Yes, specifically in the southern part of China here.
Southern part of China. Do you want to start, Sally?
So the question is how, sorry, say again.
What is your recommendation to place a new product to the southern part of China, having in mind the current context of the virus, the coronavirus?
Does it mean to launch a new product in China at this time?
Yes.
In the south part of China. So specifically in the south, how to put a product in the south part of China.
Some part of China, yes. So it will be probably Guangzhou, which is at the richest province or state in China. And in fact, today CNBC is holding their East Tech West conference in China. I got a few partners and clients there. Things are very normal there. So just think about, while we are still in very much COVID state, lockdown mode, people in China are meeting in person, 200 people gather in a conference room right now. So basically, I think before you want to launch a product in the southern part of China, you need to understand their demands. Right now, they are, like, if I can just generalize the picture, that well-being, healthcare, anything fintech, healthcare, tech, biotech are very hot in China. So just do your research to see if there's actually real demand for your products at the moment. And then again, plan well, like what Ben said, to find a strategic partner to help you to distribute, and also to really understand who your target audience and communicate with them in the right channels at the right time.
Thank you so much, Sally. Benjamin, any final views?
Yeah, so just to add on that, so yes, so obviously it depends on the type of product, but in general, if you're going to go down a partner route, then obviously prioritize partners that have strong capabilities in southern China. Many companies will claim to have national coverage, but the vast majority of them are only strong in 1 or 2 provinces, much weaker than the rest, often relying on third parties that are supporting them. So you want to identify the ones which are particularly strong in southern China. And of course, if they're headquartered in southern China, the chances are they are very strong in southern China. That's the first thing. The second thing is from a positioning perspective, and this is something I'm sure Sally can tell you a lot more about, but every region of China is very, very different in terms of the consumer. and culturally. So many years ago, I ran Reebok sports brand in China. I was general manager for sports at Reebok. And the product range that we had to have was dramatically different in southern China to northern China to Middle Eastern China, like Shanghai. So, for example, for sports shoes, the color red was very popular in southern China, and the color ranges were very different. Also, shoe sizes were much smaller in southern China. In northern China, the shoe sizes were huge, and actually people preferred leather shoes to sports shoes. And in Shanghai, it was much more about gold colors. So really understanding the specific needs of your specific market, which is very different in southern China. And then finally, if you have limited budget, going back to the first question, of course, internet is a great way. And whilst internet platforms allow you to cover all of China, you're able to target certain regions with your messaging, your targeting, your positioning, and it's a much more cost-effective way than going offline.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. So we are coming to an end in this webinar. So I'd like to thank so much Sally and Benjamin for being with us and for all the excellent insights they gave on all their wonderful experience in working with China. So from ENRICH in China, many thanks also to all of you. Thank you so much, Mariana, for being with us, helping us with all the technical aspects. And all of you are welcome to contact us in the future, also with additional questions and additional support that ENRICH in China can provide you together with our partners, including Benjamin and Sally. So again, thank you so much, and please be safe, and we stay in touch. Have a nice day and a nice evening to the ones in China. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Well done. Okay. Bye for now. Bye.